Hello, power users. In today's video, we will learn how to use the Ajax Connector to update backend meta field values directly from the front end using Interactor. Let's get started. Let's take a look at our setup. We have a counter that we can update by clicking these buttons. And as we can see, the count will go up or down by 1 or 5 according to the button we click. We also have this text field. Anything we write in this field will show up underneath because both the numbers and the text are actually stored in two meta fields we've set up beforehand. Even when we update, the values won't get lost. Now, if we go to the backend and refresh, we can actually see our two meta fields have correctly stored that information from the front end. Let's change the text and come back once again, and we can confirm that we are changing meta field values from the front end. This is extremely useful in a wide number of use cases. So let's take a look at how we actually set it all up. Of course, the first thing that we did was creating these two meta fields. We used JetEngine, but we could have used ACF as well. First field is my number, second field is my text. In the Elementor editor, the counter is actually a heading widget with the custom field dynamic tag, fetching the value from the my number field. The text is set up the same way, but fetches the value from the my text field. Both widgets have a HTML tag of H2. We'll see why this is important later. We also gave each a CSS ID, number for the counter and title for the text. Let's take a look at our buttons here. Each has a unique CSS ID that we can target using Interactor, but we've also added hashtag self in the link field. This is because otherwise Elementor would render the buttons inactive once clicked. Speaking of Interactor, that is where the magic takes place. We have a trigger with the click firing event for each button. So click +1, +5, and click -1 and -5. Each trigger targets the corresponding CSS ID of each button and is mapped to the corresponding event. So click +1 is paired with increment number by 1. Click -1 is linked with decrease number by 1, and so on and so forth for each. We also have the trigger for the input change in the text field, which is of course a form field, and as such we need to target it by using the Elementor form field ID. If you're not sure how, we have a tutorial for it linked in the description. The firing event for this trigger is key up. This is linked to the update meta field event. So let's go over these events. This is where the Ajax Connector comes into play, as we've chosen Ajax from the event drop list here. With Ajax selected, we will have 4 operations available: increment, decrement, update meta field, and callback update. Since this is the increase number by 1 event, we will choose the increment operation. The post ID field will tell the event where to look for the form fields. We can actually input a manual value here, or leave it blank. If left blank, it will use the current post ID. In case we are working with a template, we will need the post ID dynamic tag to fetch the correct ID. We've pointed the event at the my number meta field so that it will interact with the correct meta field. In this case, we've selected the post meta context, but we can also choose from taxonomy, user, and option page contexts. Toggling on callback update into the callback settings will update the selected element in the DOM with the corresponding change. We can turn this off if we only want to update the field in the backend. But for this example, we're updating both front end and backend. So we've toggled it on and selected the HTML callback method. We've targeted the widget with the counter using its ID, but we've also specified H2 next to it, because that's where its styling is coming from. If we remove the H2 tag, it will lose the styling once it's updated. That's why we gave both widgets the H2 HTML tag. The parameters settings determine, in this case, what you actually want to increment the value by. Since it's the +1 button, we'll write 1. We can also fetch the value from a form field, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. In the advanced options, we have the usual Interactor options like delay, responsive, and fire next options. The decrement events are set up the exact same way, except we selected the decrement operation. Even the value in the parameter settings is still 1. Since it still represents the value the operation will decrement by. If we wrote -1, for example, it would effectively increment the counter rather than decrement. The increment and decrement number by 5 events are set up the same way as well. but their value is set to 5, of course. The update meta field event is the event that will change the myText meta field. It's an Ajax event, but in the operation we chose update meta field this time around. We've still chosen to use the post ID dynamic tag here, and we targeted the myText meta field. The context is post meta all the same, because both fields are in the post meta. The callback method is text, even if here it would work with HTML as well. But in some cases it helps to have text without HTML. Again, the element selector is the ID of the heading widget, and we've added the H2 again to keep the styling options. Now for this one, we'll want to toggle on fetch form field in the parameter settings. In the fetch parameter field, we will paste the form field ID. Again, this is different from the ID that we gave to the field in the advanced tab here. As we saw in the link tutorial we referred to before, we will have to write hashtag form dash field dash the actual ID we gave it. That'll target the correct form field. This is the whole setup behind the function of the page. Let's see it all in action once again. Clicking +1 will increment the number, -1 will decrement it, +5 will add 5 to the total, and -5 will remove 5. As expected, and again, typing something in this form field will change the text in the targeted widget. Refreshing the page won't change the values as they've been saved to the meta fields. Now, let's take a look at the other Ajax operation that we haven't used on this particular page. Callback update. This will work exactly the same as the update meta field operation, but will not update the targeted meta field in the backend. So it's used to update only the targeted DOM element on the front end here in the callback settings. One very important thing to note is that since the update meta field operation will, as we saw, update the meta field directly from the front end, it's heavily recommended to not connect it to critical or otherwise important meta fields, as each meta field connected using this operation will become available for modification to anybody with access to the page. However, for an added bit of security, we can use the Interactor conditions. For example, here we can allow only logged-in users to carry out the update meta field event. By selecting user logged in as a precondition to allow the trigger connected to the update meta field event to fire. Even better, we can require the logged-in user to be an administrator by selecting user role is, and then administrator. We can connect as many triggers as we need here, so we won't need to create more than one condition. Thank you for watching. With the right security precautions, this feature has the potential to revolutionize the way we work with meta fields in Elementor. We can't wait to see what you will do with it. See you in the next tutorial.